Portal, my first game ever purchased on Steam. Time really has flown by. It's already been just under 17 years since this classic came out, and in my opinion, it hasn't aged a bit. The premise and gameplay are as unique as any game can get, the movement is extremely precise and fluent, far better than the unnecessarily restrictive sequel, and the game's aesthetic and quotability sent shockwaves throughout the internet and beyond, it being one of the most well-known of Valve's prestigious Source Engine titles. I'm even dedicating a whole month to Portal this year, this being but one of my Portal month videos. There's simply no other game that can hold a candle to it, because it already has one, and it still holds up, now more than ever due to recent developments. For the longest time, it's been possible to load Portal maps into Garry's mod, but anything that made Portal what it is, such as the turrets or the Portal gun itself, simply wasn't compatible. This took the emptiness and liminal nature of Portal a bit too far, and rightfully so. I'd venture to guess most of us wouldn't care enough to give it much of our time. But seemingly out of the blue, the developers of Gmod have finally added support for the NPCs from Portal, and after going through the motions like a child playing Gmod for the first time, it dawned on me. What would beating Portal in Garry's mod look like? Now, of course, Gmod gives you the power to do anything, and there's nothing that's stopping you from no-clipping to the end and killing Glados within a few seconds. It would be much more interesting if there were some restrictions that forced us to go through the same struggles as regular Portal. And so I came up with a loadout that should in theory be able to beat Portal, but we just don't know that yet. So gear up and brace yourselves for a lot of body mutilation. This is the Portal month No Portal Portaled into Gmod challenge. Before we can get started with the challenge, we need to know exactly what tools we'll be using in place of the Portal gun. Each use of these will be counting to show the minimum number of unconventional actions required to get Glados off her high horse. There's also an order of preference to them since some tools are more overpowered than others. Listing them off in this order, our first tool is sprinting. This is a form of movement that is missing from Portal but is inherited by default from Half-Life 2 into Garry's mod. Sprinting allows us to leap across decently long gaps that can't be cleared with a simple crouch jump. The next tool down on the list is the gravity gun, the staple weapon of Half-Life 2 and our stand-in for a Portal gun-like device. This weapon is required in order to pick up the Aperture science-weighted storage cubes, as they're too heavy for our weak Gmod arms. But more importantly, the gravity gun has two new functions over the Portal gun, the most sensible of them being the punt or primary attack, which launches objects further than they can normally be thrown. This is merely an extension of throwing power which someone could feasibly have given enough strength in their arms. On the other hand, the secondary attack is not humanly possible, it being an increased reach that grabs cubes and props from further away. Knowing this, punts will be preferred over reaches, but keep in mind that if we use the primary attack on an object that is far away, it will count towards our total number of reaches as well. If we still can't get to where we need to go even with these abilities, the next option available to us is grenades. These are the lesser of the available explosive weapons in Garry's mod, and even without suit charge, it's possible to survive grenade jumps from certain angles. Grenade jumps give you slightly more vertical momentum than a sprint jump, but loads more forward momentum, so we can technically clear any huge gap. Though if we're still struggling at this point, plausible movement isn't going to cut it anymore, so we have to make some leaps in logic. Allow me to introduce you to Stan, a teleportation weapon from Jazztronauts that lets you warp through walls. I chose him specifically because 1, Jazztronauts is awesome, and 2, he's not a flawless form of transportation. Stan only works if you are phasing through a world brush or prop and not into the void. Additionally, certain complex brushes, including some funk detail entities, completely thwart Stan's power, and despite Portal's simplistic geometry, there are quite a few of these that have the potential to ruin our run. There's also no surviving if you teleport anywhere directly above pools of goo. This means that we'll need one last failsafe to keep the challenge alive, and it comes in the form of props and the tool gun. In Garry's mod, we can spawn props and using the tool gun, weld them to any surface, which instantly teleports and fixes them to the point of the weld. We'll be counting the number of props spawned and welds needed to progress, with welds being preferred over spawning more props. I'll exclusively be using the test chamber signs for the props, as they make the most sense thematically and they're decently flat. That's our loadout covered, but there are 3 final rules for us to be aware of. First, we have no suit charge and automatically heal if we aren't hurt within a set amount of time. This is in line with the conditions in Portal, but what isn't is our second rule. No clipping, moving props while no clipping, and changing levels are allowed, but only if Gmod doesn't spawn us in or move us to the correct location, or so we can return to a previously reached state. Some of the maneuvers required for this challenge are dependent on the Source Engine's physics, which tend not to work, and it would be absolute torture to have to restart start from scratch after every failed attempt. As for our final rule, it's self-explanatory. No going out of bounds or using console commands such as spawning airboats. Default controls only. Now that the rules of the challenge are in place, we can finally take our first steps to see if this perfectly pointless problem is at all possible. Beginning on map 00 in test chamber 0, we wake up from the relaxation vault to an immediate obstacle. We are surrounded on all sides by unbreakable glass, and the first portal pair will never open because we are not, in fact, playing Portal. So we're going to have to break out Stan and use him for the first time right at the start. Chamber 1 poses the exact same problem. Glass on all sides and no portal to let us beat the chamber normally. This chamber actually came close to completely preventing us from progressing, as we can't use Stan to phase through the door because it's surrounded by complex brushes. Fortunately, my Discord members found a place on the right side wall that Stan works on, so after teleporting through the right side glass and then the wall, we've jumped to 3 uses of him so far. You know this is going to be difficult when I've already sought help from my Discord server by the second puzzle. Moving on to map 01, test chamber 2 is the first chamber where we get to do something better optimized. We're supposed to walk through the blue portal to grab the portal gun, but the portal never spawns and we don't even need the gun to begin with because we can sprint. It's possible to crouch jump from a sprint onto the top of the wall the portal gets shot through. There's an invisible wall next to the door that's meant to prevent us from skipping this part, but we're so fast we can fly right past it. Chamber 3 is almost the same story. We can handily sprint jump across the first big gap to get to the corner, but this last platform is just slightly too far away for us to reach. This means that we have our first documented use of Half-Life 2's grenades. Dropping them with right click is just barely consistent enough, and we can time our jump by listening to the click sounds to survive the explosion and land by the elevator. So far so good, let's check out map 02. Test chamber 4 is the first chamber that doesn't require any unconventional moves. Well, technically. You see, in Portal you move slower and you don't gain much speed by jumping, whereas in Gmod we can get to the cube and grab it before it falls by jumping repeatedly, without needing to sprint or reach with the gravity gun. I won't be counting this as unconventional because we're still using the same source engine controls from Portal, even if their effects are modified in Gmod. Chamber 5, however, won't be so kind to us. Both of the cubes are out of our normal grab range, so we have to use the gravity gun to reach for the cube in the pit, place it on the button, then jump from the cube to the platform to grab the second cube normally. After entering the door, we come face to face with our old arch nemesis, unbreakable glass. That's another stand to add to the total. One thing to note about playing Portal in Garry's mod is that you can't grab energy pellets with the gravity gun and have them retain their internal map logic, making any energy pellet puzzles impossible via traditional means. Knowing this, map 03 might appear as if it starts off with a forced grenade jump in test chamber 6, but if you look very closely, you'll see a couple of blocks on the right non-portable wall sticking out. To our pleasant surprise, these form a perfect staircase which we're able to hop up and leap from, landing on the complimentary victory lift without needing to run. And guess what? Chamber 7 is just the same. At first, you might think that you need to use Stan on the edge of this floating platform and then sprint to the exit, but we can do it in no unconventional actions whatsoever. There's another block poking out of the right-hand side wall, and the collision of this model allows us to stand on top of it much lower than we probably should be allowed to, meaning that all the chambers in map 03 are a cakewalk and add nothing to our total. Test chamber 8, our first puzzle over goo, is quite the deceptive map. My first instinct was to do a grenade jump all the way across, and while this does look super badass, we're trying to optimize certain actions over using grenades. You can just as easily navigate over the goo with 2 well-timed sprint jumps. Yet I'm still a bit sad that these are preferred over the grenade jump, as the latter looks way cooler. Oh, yes!
Oh, that was incredible.
One grenade! We don't have to worry about our silly golf score in chamber 9 though, as with a fair bit of effort, it's possible to fling this cube upwards through the hole using the gravity gun without punting it. That's another chamber to add to the beaten normally list. Well, as normal as Garry's mod gets. Test chamber 10 appears more intimidating than it really is. You can crouch jump up this step and leap over the first gap without sprinting. It's only when you get to the second half of the map that our lucky streak runs out. We've forced to sprint here to get onto the first raised platform and jump off a grenade to reach the second. I did try sprinting off this sticking out block in an attempt to optimize this room, but unfortunately it's too far away for us to make the jump. Chamber 11 has us see our good friend Stan again. He gets us through it quickly by warping us carefully under the start of the stairs at the end of the first room, then phasing through the door blocking off the exit. He also helps us get all the way up to the top of Chamber 12, but can't get us through the door because of all those damned complex brushes. We need to get this cube onto the button. Believe it or not, it is indeed possible to gently throw the cube and have it land perfectly on the button without a sprint, though it may take a couple of tries. Nevertheless, we're able to move on, and that's all that matters. Test Chamber 13 is a weird one. At first, we can grab the cube with our gravity gun's reach and use it to jump up to the door, but from there we have no choice but to use Stan, as there's no way of bringing this first cube with us. Fortunately, the exit is wider than usual, which means there are some simple brushes that Stan can phase us through. Now, Chamber 14 has a reputation of being extremely easy to cheese with the portal gun, but will we have the same luck without it? Yes, of course we will. There's another block jutting out from the wall. 2 regular crouch jumps and we're out of there, without ever needing to grab the cube or properly use a complimentary victory lift so far. And here we are at Chamber 15. Oh boy. There's a lot to this one, so just bear with me. We start the chamber off immediately with a sprint jump from a block on the left, and follow that up with an energy puzzle. Nope, not doing that. Just stand through the rising platform and get out of there. The next jump is unfortunately not possible just by sprinting, so we have to toss a grenade into the mix. And it's here that we reach our most difficult obstacle so far. This is a winding hallway that isn't connected by simple brushes, and you can't stand on the props poking out of the goo, as there are push triggers that send you to your death. This is going to require an inventive solution, which means that we have to make use of our first ever prop and weld. Using the easy weld function of the weld tool by right-clicking, we attach our new prop to the wall furthest from us and rotate it to be flat. From this position, we can sprint onto it and then do another sprint jump around the corner to make it onto the floating platform hiding from us. Clearing this jump may take multiple tries, as the sign wobbles whenever you run across it, causing your jumps not to register half of the time. And last of all, we're forced to ride this victory lift to the top, where we can jump onto the outside edge of this receptacle door and just barely swerve onto the final platform. Wow, that took a lot of effort. I'm so glad we get to move on to Test Chamber 16. This android hell of a chamber has some things in store for us. Well, actually, only one thing. All of the turrets are incredibly easy to take out just by knocking them over, since we walk and jump much faster than in Portal, all except the second last one, which is behind this fence. Fortunately, we can carry as many cubes from this room to the fence as we want, and use them to build a staircase over it, staying out of sight of the turret before we give it the 1-2 knockover. But in order to make it past this last fence between us and the end of the map, we of course have to rely on Stan. You know what? This is obscenely cruel, giving so much attention to Stan over the companion cube. Are you kidding me? Let's let them have their one chamber to shine in. Test Chamber 17. But hang on, it can actually be completed without the companion cube using Stan only one time. I'm not a heartless bastard though. For the sake of optimization, we'll take the cube with us, requiring one sprint to jump straight to the finish, and of course, the burning of the innocents. I guess they couldn't stand the heat. I have no regrets. Test Chamber 18 is the last of the chambers with any sense of normalcy. No, what am I saying? It's not normal in the slightest. None of this is. We clear the gap in front of us with a sprint jump, then stand all the way over here at this very specific location to skip past the door blocking the way, ending with another stand all the way up to the top of the map. I'm sure you're getting fed up with my blatant use of stand throughout these levels, but don't blame me, blame the map. After all, Chamber 19 solves this problem of yours. If we try to use him to go through any of the walls, we'll plunge into the depths and meet our untimely end. Once again, we get to make use of props and welds. This curved hallway is very long, so we'll need 2 chamber signs to jump back and forth between. First of all, we do some simple jumps to reach this button. From here, we'll need to press it and place one sign through the door on the opposite wall. Now we jump onto that sign with a sprint and place the second sign on the wall to our right as far as it will go. Good luck sprint jumping across this gap over the energy pellet when the sign you're standing on isn't stable enough to register your inputs. If we grab the first sign with our weld tool, we can now place it as far as it will go down the narrow passage and sprint jump through there. And I don't know about you, but I really don't want to feel what it's like to sit around in 4,000 degrees Kelvin heat. That's 3,727 degrees Celsius. Or about this many superheated desserts with included fish-shaped ethyl benzene for you Americans out there. So let's instead use Stan to phase through this this precise location above us. We've now officially entered the escape sequence, and if you thought all of this has been nothing special so far, the precision and dedication required to make it through these final perilous passageways will shock you. While we're still in chamber map 15, we can carry these 3 barrels over this silo and then up to the gate to jump over it. We don't even have to worry about the collapsing staircase. Taking 2 of them with us, we can touch the fan on the right with 1 to stop it, and as long as we do so at the correct time, we can crouch through the stopped blades. Now we've reached an impasse, and while we could use Stan here, I found a more optimized method after lots of trial and error. Unfortunately, this is the point in the challenge where things get super tricky and precise. You'll see what I mean. By placing one of the barrels on its side against the wall like this, making sure you leave the other one standing up over here, we can run across it and take the riskiest sprint crouch jump ever to land on the bent catwalk. To reach the other catwalk, we just walk along the edge of the window here. But don't give up on the barrels just yet. We need one for when we go into the pipe, as it will save us having to use Stan to get through a door. All you have to do is sit at the far end of the bent catwalk, then hold down the gravity gun's reach, and if you're lucky, you'll grab the barrel before it has the chance to be deleted by the goo. Now for this next jump, I tried over and over to make it with the barrel only, but it just isn't humanly possible with the source physics, so I'm going to put this part down as 1 point for grenade jumping, after first throwing the barrel to the top floor to save us from having to reach for it. After traveling through the pipe while being careful not to lose our barrel, we're back in test chamber 9, in which we do the same thing as the first time we were here to get the barrel through the hole. Then put it down on the button and wait, the barrel doesn't trigger the button? Huh? Is it not heavy enough? How are we supposed to get through the door now? Well, just for this, we're putting to use an old-fashioned portal glitch. We'll stand on the button and gently roll the barrel forward in the path of the door. Once the barrel is in place, we step off the button and make a mad dash through the door while it's being held open. Then get the hell away from there just in case the barrel flies out and kills us.
Get in there!
Yes! Oh, come on! And thankfully, that brings us to the end of this bout of barely possible feats. This challenge is looking more and more promising the longer it goes on. The last thing we need to do in this map is use Stan twice to reach the level transition, and just like that, the test chamber maps are all done and dusted. Entering escape map 00, these pistons get us close to the hallway up top, but not quite far enough to get away with a crouch jump. We can use a carefully dropped grenade to make the remaining distance. Following this, it's time for some more Stan action. We warp directly to the top of this room with him, then to get around this series of fast pistons, we phase into the normally inaccessible area on the left, aiming at this point to stay in front of the silo, then aim here to teleport all the way past the large pistons and make it into the next room. After one last consecutive use of him, aiming at the fence above all these moving obstructions, we land safely at the end of the piston span. The last thing we need to pull off in this map is a difficult to execute grenade jump from this pipe to the piston behind us. First, you have to make sure the grenade balances on the pipe. Then you have to hope the piston is in the right position for you to land on top of it. Once you've pulled that off, escape map 00 is done for, and it was surprisingly a lot easier than map 15. Escape map 01 is going to be much of the same, and I spent way too long carrying props around when in reality you don't need them at all. The turret fight is way easier with our increased speed and the barrels everywhere, but getting out of it is another story. We're going to have to use Stan to squeeze through this small gap. If we aim him just right, we don't have to exert any more energy to get on top of the catwalks, and we can simply crouch through the entrance to the next turret chamber. After it opens, we have another bent catwalk we need to scale. I tried a couple of things, including grenade jumping, which I knew was possible to improve upon, and attempting to sprint jump off a dead turret, but that was so inconsistent I couldn't do it more than once. I eventually settled on jumping to this broken staircase on the left-hand side. All we have to do is sprint jump from this generator onto the bottom step, and making it to the catwalk from here is easy enough for gamers like us. By the way, the rocket turrets, one of which we meet in this next room, we only see active this one time, and honestly it's such a shame that they weren't used more in the rest of the levels, as our optimizations are not kind to this NPC. It poses no threat to us whatsoever, since we won't be constantly walking into its path like in the original game, apart from these 2 times. To take care of the glass blocking us from advancing here, we're not going to use another grenade, nor do we need to use our first gravity gun punt. Instead, what we're going to do is throw a chair through the window. Yeah, it would appear that in Garry's mod, we have enough upper body strength to break the glass on our own. We don't even need to break the pipe above us to get a cube, for we can put the chair down on the floor and crouch jump off it to make it into the ventilation shaft. Boy, Chell must be shaking in her long fall boots right now. Unfortunately, our power trip ends here, as we can't stop the fan blades beneath us with the chair. Even if we could, the gaps between them aren't big enough for us to fit through, so this last part of the map will require us to use Stand to finish things off. And now we arrive at the last leg of the challenge, Escape Map 02. Whether we make or break the run now hangs in the balance of this single map. I'm feeling pretty confident as is, but our hopes could easily be dashed if we can't defeat Glados. It's time to pull out all the stops, or at least the few that are necessary. First up, we have to sprint across this large gap at the start of the map. Next, we use Stand to phase into the giant turret chamber, and then we skip it immediately without a shred of remorse by looking to the top left and teleporting not even to the catwalk above us, but into the room past it, just to be as obnoxious as possible to everyone that despises every time I use him. Then it's merely a brisk walk down some hallways to make it to the heart of Aperture Science, Glados's chamber. So, what's the strategy here? The intended way to start the boss fight, as you're probably aware, is to dump the morality core into the emergency intelligence incinerator by throwing it through a portal. But who says we have to start the boss fight? That'll cause all sorts of unwanted stress that we would very much not like to deal with. The problem we have is that we still do need to burn a total of 4 cores to win the challenge. So how are we going to obtain and subsequently destroy them without engaging Glados in combat? That's easy. We're going to bully her because she's extremely sensitive. The gravity gun's primary attack finally comes in handy, as even from the slightest bit of damage, Glados will drop one of her remaining cores exactly like she does when hit by a rocket. 3 hits down, and we've already spawned all of the cores in our vicinity. The trick now is to find a way to grab all of them. Let's tackle the most difficult ones first. With Stand, you can get on top of Glados's platform, but it's very finicky, and if you're not careful, you can end up stuck inside her model's spinning parts. With this one action, we've nabbed the Cake core and can throw it down to the floor. The next core to grab is the Anger core, which is hovering in midair by the platform we're on. It's easy enough to jump over it and grab it without sprinting, just as long as you don't touch those dreaded spinning models again. That just leaves one last core still out of our grasp, the Curiosity core. Unfortunately, we'll have to expend another gravity gun reach in order to complete our collection. But with all 4 cores gathered together, we can now begin the arduous process of attempting to lie them all on top of the incinerator. I've found the most consistent way of doing this is to arrange them in a rhombus-like pattern, with 2 sitting on the edge because they keep slipping down, and the other 2 resting on top of them so they'll fall right in. We can then head over and press the button, jump over to the incinerator without sprinting, and attempt to stuff as many cores into it as possible. As long as we don't just incinerate 1 core, Glados's countdown routine in which she spawns the neurotoxin and rocket turret will be skipped entirely, and the boss fight will never start. But the win condition is completely unaffected, so even if we have to take multiple trips, we're successfully able to take her out and trigger the ending cutscene, meaning that even in Garry's mod with these few tools and each with their own restrictions, it is indeed possible to beat Portal from start to finish. Unfortunately, with all the cheating we've already done, we're not going to have the privilege of seeing the final cutscene, because Gmod says no. That's totally fine though. With the challenge now over, I feel no shame in no-clipping down there and triggering it myself. Now I can truly have my cake and eat it too. Oh, and I guess the companion cube is here as well. Let's just hope it was inanimate this whole time and didn't feel what it was like to die. And that's the challenge. I want to thank my Discord members, specifically ZeroMan95 for giving me the idea for this video, plus him and Alex8992924, Damien TK, Gravy, MajorHawk10, and Wolf PvP for helping me develop this strategy. You too can be a part of future videos by joining my Discord server. So what did you think of my run? Should I also do the same for the advanced chambers or the Still Alive expansion? Or do you think you're able to improve my score? Maybe you found a different loadout that'll let you beat the game in less actions. Let's be honest, of course you have. You can do whatever you want in Garry's mod. The competition isn't even fair, so I'm gonna make my getaway before anything crazier happens. Leave your questionably scientific opinions in the comments below, don't forget to like and subscribe, and as always, I will see you all next time.